Welcome everyone to my presentation on use-related risk analysis and root cause analysis, the secret ingredients for effective comparative use human factors studies. I want to thank FDA for the invitation to share this research today, as well as all the workshop organizers. And a warm welcome and hello to everyone joining in today. A little about me. My name is Melissa Lemke and I'm founder of Human Ability Designs. I'm a biomedical engineer who got started in human factors when I actually became a lay caregiver for my brother Matt, who's a paralyzed Army veteran. He has a high-level spinal cord injury and various disabilities, so I've been in the trenches of providing critical care to a patient in the home. And I've also helped hundreds of clients successfully meet FDA human factors requirements on both the drug and device sides of the agency. And I'm really proud to say that I've had 100% submission success designing and implementing human factors programs to get safe and effective products on the market. These products that are ultimately there to help patients receive the care they need, which is my motivation for involvement in this research. So I come to you with a passion for good design and definitely rigorous human factors science, and I bring practical experience with both quantitative methods where my educational roots started and qualitative methods that make up the risk-based human factors engineering process in support of most FDA submissions. I want to recognize my collaborators who've been foundational to the success of the work I'm presenting today. Dr. Megan Conrad is the project PI who leads our efforts, along with University of Detroit Mercy graduate students Julianne and Carly. And Drs. Mary Beth Privatera and Molly Story are both important contributors to this work. So our team is mostly consultants who sit between FDA and industry, and we're all human factors experts working on this research with FDA to help advance their draft guidance related to generic drug development and how to identify and analyze user interface design differences to compare an RLD and proposed generic on the ANDA pathway. We're always taking a systems engineering approach to the science of human factors. The graphic on the right shows how our research is anchored through thinking about who is using a product, typically both healthcare professionals and lay users for generic products. We think about where a product is used, including clinical and non-clinical environments for generics, and then how a product is used, the use-related tasks that all bring some degree of potential use errors and risk into the use of the design, which means use-related risk is at the core of our comparative use method, and we're looking to help sponsors provide the necessary evidence that FDA needs to determine if a proposed generic user interface is safe and effective in support of an ANDA submission. And our work has many different stakeholders. So most importantly, we're thinking about the end users who need safe and effective generic products. Again, those patients and healthcare professionals. We are thinking about the ANDA reviewers at FDA who need a consistent way to conduct their review. We also have industry and consultants who need a reliable method, and academic researchers who often support these comparative use evaluations. So as we took a look at FDA's draft guidance, we felt it laid a positive foundation for how to compare a proposed generic and RLD. The threshold analysis systematically fleshes out how the key components of the user interface and tasks or user interactions compare side by side. And then the comparative use method builds on the threshold analysis for comparing any of those other than minor user interface differences using a non-inferiority statistical method. And the method asks the overall question if a proposed device is as effective or not worse than its RLD. So this comparative use method has unique research questions, primarily because of the ANDA regulations. Here, FDA is asking for sponsors to prove that number one, the proposed generic has the same clinical effect and safety profile as the RLD, and number two, that the proposed generic can be substituted for the RLD without intervention of a healthcare professional, and/or without additional training prior to use. Interesting research questions. So, there's also been great debate in the industry over the comparative use method, with industry publicly commenting on the draft guidance with two key concerns I want to highlight. First of all, the draft guidance focuses on comparing counts of use errors, so the statistics focus on use error rates and an acceptable deviance between the two user interfaces. And secondly, industry stakeholders really want a qualitative analysis similar to the human factors validation study. Our team's research is a 3-year project where we're developing use-related risk analysis-based comparative use human factors method with 3 aims that we're conquering. Aim number 1, we're completing a lit review and stakeholder interviews to develop a body of knowledge related to existing comparative use methods. Aim 2 relates to developing a visual taxonomy in order to help stakeholders systematically analyze the overall user interface design attributes to help identify minor and other than minor design differences. And Mary Beth will talk about that in a bit. And then aim 3 is where we'll pull aims 1 and 2 together to develop our improved method, which I see as sort of a hybrid approach between the current draft comparative use guidance and the CDRH final human factors guidance that relies heavily on the qualitative method that we all know and is built upon the use-related risk analysis. So for aim 1, we've conducted a lit search and launched our survey and stakeholder interviews with 19 respondents so far. It's still open, and we'd love to hear from you if any of you are interested and want to reach out to participate. Our respondents are experienced with threshold analysis and the statistical-based comparative use method for various types of combination products. And we're seeing that industry finds the threshold analysis to be straightforward. However, clarification is needed if the comparative use study would replace the human factors validation study for the proposed generic. And we're also seeing a request for bringing use-related risk and potential harm into the analysis. So, the following participant comments illustrate some key opinions that we're happy to report match the approach we're taking with our method. First comment mentions focusing on use error rates along with the lacking qualitative approach the industry is used to. Another participant mentions the lacking context of only using or only focusing on use error rates along with the vagueness of selecting a statistical power that may lead to, quote, statistical shenanigans. And we know that usability publications are slim pickings in our industry, which really is problematic for this method. And then finally, there's some frustration with the inability to achieve state-of-the-art usability with only focusing on equivalence, which really points at the regulation itself, not just the method, and could be an interesting discussion with the agency. Also in AIM 1, we've conducted an extensive literature review with one part being focused on the use-related risk analysis, or URRA. A little history for you. The URRA was first mentioned in the 2016 Draft Guidance on related clinical study considerations in combination product design and development. The URRA is pretty standard practice at this point in FDA submissions, and it really serves as the backbone of the human factors validation study and brings the context of use-related risk into the task analysis. So the main secret I'm sharing today is that if there's no URRA comparison in the comparative use method, then there's really no way the human factors analysis can be complete. So this slide shows a template that my company developed for sponsors to generate a successful URRA for FDA review. It's a tool that's available for free on my website if you want to reach out and obtain a copy. You can see from the column headings, you start with the hierarchical task analysis on the far left, then moving to the right, you populate task by task or line by line, the potential use errors or things that could go wrong while using the device. These we've started to populate with our literature search, and there are also formative studies, FDA adverse event reporting systems, and other sources of this information, but very important information. And then we think about potential harms along with the severity of harm ratings from the risk analysis. And finally, the user interface risk controls that are linked to different tasks. As an actual example, here's a URRA we've put together for the EpiPen. You can see the detailed tasks that start with removing the auto-injector from the carrier tube and holding it in the right orientation in the hand. Because this is an emergency use product and potential life-saving product, all the tasks will have a high severity rating linked to the potential use errors. And then the risk controls of the user interface are quite important to note as well. For example, the color coding of the auto-injector ends, the on-device labeling, even the IFU. So this one would be for the RLD, and then for a proposed generic, we're working on a comparative URRA at the core of our improved comparative use methodology. For aim 3 of our project, which we aren't yet working on but we're aiming towards, we'll be using a case study approach with a proposed generic compared to an RLD, where we will definitely have differences between the different labeling and devices so that we have different features to dig into. And we'll be merging the findings from our aim 1 lit review and interviews and aim 2 visual URRA-based taxonomy with the case study approach to develop our improved method. Our users in the study will be both RLD novice and RLD experienced. The RLD experienced users will likely highlight for us when use errors may be due to negative transfer or when users use a new design incorrectly because they're used to the prior design. We're also interested in RLD novice users because we know that substitutions in the real world may happen in the reverse direction, where using the new generic is followed by the RLD. So this could be interesting. And while we aren't there yet, one key improvement we know is coming in our approach is another qualitative analysis, which is the second ingredient in our improved method, the root cause analysis. Another standard practice in the industry and fundamental to understanding the context of use errors within a human factors evaluation. Root cause analysis will help us provide meaning and context to the counts of use errors being compared, and it'll help us parse out the meaningful use errors, so to speak, because in our human factors analysis, we often have non-design related issues or use errors that are irrelevant to the design of the user interface, and we wouldn't want to count those. For example, study artifacts or use issues on the RLD that could even be improved with the proposed generic. So the root cause analysis is really a gold mine for determining those problematic device or labeling design attributes when comparing the RLD and proposed generic in our method. And finally, the root cause analysis will show us when we actually have design improvements because we'll have meaning behind the use errors that we're seeing. Participant comments are key to the root cause analysis and provide the what, why, and how behind the counting. And we think it's going to be the window of opportunity to understand when we actually have improvements or equivalents that meets the as good as requirement for the ANDA pathway. So our key takeaways are that number 1, the use-related risk analysis and root cause analysis are keys to an improved comparative use human factors method. Number 2, both of these human factors tools are foundational to a solid human factors process. Number 3, they will ultimately help improve the task analysis and counting of use errors. And finally, the URRA and root cause analysis will provide the necessary details, linkage, and prioritization of use-related risks and the data being compared. And now you know our secret ingredients. Thanks, everyone.